This is the review show after Melbourne have defeated the Richmond Tigers by 20 points at the MCG last night in the Anzac Eve clash. It was a bit of a shit game, but Melbourne had a great third quarter. And to join me to dissect it all is Caden McDonald. Welcome, mate.
Adrian, thanks for having me. Yeah, a bit of a forgettable sort of 3 quarters at the MCG, but we get the chockies and we bank it. And yeah, a little two-piece for the boys. So 2 on the trot. And yeah, it feels like we're slowly going in the right direction, a little bit.
Definitely. I think we all know that there'll be bigger challenges ahead. West Coast next week. They'll be fanging for a victory because I don't think they'll win this weekend. So that'll be a bigger test than people think, and there's a bit of revenge on the line for me. I don't feel like the return fixture against the Eagles at the MCG last season was enough. The Harley Reid show still sticks in my memory, and a shout out to 2 of my nearest and dearest friends, Richie Johnson and Josh Rawling, because Kados, they actually were over there in Perth to see the Harley Reid show. And I think they both made a pledge to each other that maybe we're just not going to go on interstate trips anymore, because a couple of the other ones that they went on, a famous loss against Adelaide by a point when we were we 10-0 at the time? I think we were going over to Adelaide. So they sat among some Crow supporters during that clash, and they suffered the vitriol of them at the end of the game, because I think they were a little bit chirpy in the final quarter, like when it looked like we were going to win that one. And then we also went over together and watched this against Port in 2023 in the wet, and we only lost that one by 4 points. So the track record for the boys is not good, and I think there's just a little bit of revenge in my mind for last year. What are you thinking before we talk about the Richmond game? What do you think about next week? Potential banana skin? Are you expecting the boys to get the job done?
No, I expect us to get the job done. I feel like, I don't know, a blueprint of ours or a staple of ours has been the interstate trips. And I know we've lost that a little bit in the last 18 months, but we've lost a lot of our shape in the last 18 months. But, you know, for 7 or 8 years, we love to travel. And I feel like it's a good opportunity. We've got a lot of WA boys. And I felt like we learned a lot from that match. Like, it didn't happen again when they came to the MCG. Harley didn't have the influence that he had. At least your mates got to see goal of the year, because I was watching that on the couch on a Sunday night, and my partner, who is into footy but isn't like a massive footy nuffy, I had to, like, maybe I didn't have to explain it to her, and maybe I mansplained it to her a little bit, but I was chatting to her about what Harley Reid just did. Like, she was like, oh, great goal. Like, yeah, that was nice. Yeah. And I'm like, no, he's 18 years old. He's stiff-armed one of the strongest, best mids in the comp. He's surrounded by Clary, Viney, Gawn. He's getting chased by track. He's taken 2 bounces and slotted it on the run, and they're up by 40 points. And I've never seen the Bont do that. Like, I'm sure he has, but you don't see Bont and Dacos and Neil. Like, the best players in the comp don't do that at all, let alone at 18, let alone against the best midfielder in the comp. So I knew straight off the bat, that is one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Oh, mate, it was insane, like utterly insane. So we've got the 2 in a row. We've got a bit of wind in our sails, a bit of momentum. We've got to get over there to the West and fucking just stick it to them. And their supporters are horrible, so I hope we can get the chockies next week. But let's turn our attention to last night, and we were just saying off air how nice it is to do a podcast the morning after. It feels a bit strange, but it feels like there'll be some genuine flow and chemistry to this, because, Kados, I've woken up this morning, the kids are running amok here at the house, but I can remember everything. I don't need to go back to the replay or anything. I only had a couple of beers last night. So a couple of strange experiences for me, only having the 2 driving in, and then waking up, and then everything's just front of mind. So let's get stuck in, and maybe we'll do this in chronological order in terms of the match summation, and we'll talk about some of the better performances from last night. And there were quite a few, to be honest. But it was really nice to see us come out of the gates, bit of foot on throat, but just giving up those final 2 goals at the end of the first quarter was a bit of a bit of a sucker punch, really. And the way that Richmond manufactured those goals was pretty shit. It was umpire assisted.
That Taranto one was shocking.
It was piss weak. It was so soft. So it was frustrating. It was annoying because there was a point there in that first quarter where I thought we're just completely all over them.
Yeah.
We were winning most of the one-on-ones, and I felt like if we'd got the next one and suddenly we're out to a 4-goal lead, it felt like we could have really have killed their spirit quite early in that contest. So the first quarter, there was a lot to like in the first half of the first quarter. Just a little bit frustrating that we let them back in.
Yeah, it was. And I don't know, throughout the night, it never felt like we didn't have the game in control. Like even in the second or third when they leveled it or, got close, we did what we did against Freo and we sort of answered back. It took a little bit longer this week. Last week against Freo, we had that counter punch really, really quickly, sort of straight out of the middle. But I don't know. Like going into the game, we knew that they were going to be plucky. They always hang around the Tigers no matter what, and they did it against Brisbane a couple of weeks ago. So it was a sort of get in and get out type job. But once it got to 40 points a little later in the game, I was licking my lips going, man, if this could be a 10-goaler, it would cancel out one of the 10-goalers that we received earlier in the season. But no, they're a plucky side, and yeah, very frustrating. That Taranto one in particular. Well, the umpires had a massive influence on the game the whole night. Like there was some that we received that I didn't really think were there. I think Mansell's goal a little bit later in the game, he did the old take possession, get tackled, and then sort of tap it up as if you don't have possession. And then sometimes they just let them play because it's like, well, that's sort of half holding the ball, but sort of half you didn't have it, so play on. But then they called it holding the man. So I feel like the umpires got duped a little bit there. But the Taranto one, what was that for? Was that like Viney sort of just ran with him through the contest and like sort of body spoiled him all the way through, but didn't like shove him, didn't hold him. They give a cheapie and he kicked straight, which made it only like a kick at quarter time, which was frustrating.
Yeah, it was. It was because I thought we'd really set the tone quite well in that game. Confidence is everything in footy. It meant that the Tigers had their tails up going into the quarter time break. And then what ended up happening before we probably talk about the third in great detail, and we don't really need to speak about the fourth quarter, but the second quarter was... It was exactly what you said last night in your message to me before we both nodded off. I think this will be a topsy-turvy year. I think we are just going to see inconsistencies in games of footy from quarter to quarter where we just can't put it all together. And the second quarter for me was symbolic of what we actually saw during that 4-week period where we lost 4 games and we were moving the ball quite well once we got it into our front half. But the execution going inside was just... It was woeful, and the player that was most culpable was Jack Viney, unfortunately. And I joked to a few of the boys at halftime. I said, "Don't honour him if he's streaming toward the 50 for a handball received. Don't give it to him." And it sounds really harsh, but the final product from Jack was hitting it not to the sweet spot. It was kicking it to the area of the 50 at the top of the square, where it's much easier for Richmond defenders and any defenders really to get a hand in to kill the ball. So what we saw last week against Fremantle from Jack, we certainly didn't see this week in terms of just being a little bit more considered with ball in hand. And it's not really his fault if he's busting a gut to put himself in a great position to receive a handball to then be the main man that takes on the most important kick in footy, which is the one going inside the forward 50. And it was just a really messy, confusing quarter for me because what ends up happening in the third quarter is a polar opposite of what we saw in the second. And a lot of that was just purely because of the pressure and the way that we ramped it up and the intensity. And I went and had a had a quick toilet break at one point during the third quarter, and I chucked it on KO, and you don't see that in the ground with the TVs. And it said that our pressure rating at one point during the third, halfway through, was about 240 to 160. It was insane. Like, that is off the charts. So whether it was a strategic game plan to conserve themselves and come out after halftime and go bang, I don't know. But clearly Melbourne are going to continue to be blighted by some inconsistency in their game style and their method, and that was on show in the second quarter. So if people are thinking they're going to get the four-quarter performance that we saw against Freo on a regular basis, I just don't think that'll be the case.
Yeah, it was so frustrating. Like, I hit you up 5 minutes into the game because I get worried that sometimes, we'll lose 3 in a row and supporters, maybe rightfully or wrongfully, can throw the baby out with the bathwater. But then I get worried that we win one and some supporters start flying off on Twitter that we're back. And I don't think either are true. I think 14th last year, and I hope I'm right, will be the lowest we'll finish for a while. I feel like we sort of jumped the gun and sort of quietly regressed while getting a lot of the young stars in. And we've gone to the draft the last few years, and now we're trying to play a different way. So it is just going to be inconsistent. It's going to be clunky. It's going to look so good at times. And I reckon there was times last night we'd use the corridor and we zip end to end, and it is scintillating. And I know that they've been working on it for a while, but we go the corridor often. Like, there's modes where, I don't know, we go out one side and we suck the whole, like the whole of the ground out to one side. And then it's just like 2 kicks and we're sort of on the opposite half forward to what we were coming into. And it just looks so good. But yeah, we are going to be inconsistent. We are going to be clunky. And so Goody, because I was really frustrated watching last night going, oh, this isn't what we did to Freo. Like, this is actually like irking me that it doesn't resemble what we did 5 days ago. And then I, as a good student, listened to Simon Goodwin's press conference and he said, we want to play multiple ways and we want to play, we want to play different game styles to what teams give us. And I haven't heard that from him before, because usually it's just like contest defense, we'll belt the other side and we'll win the exact same way every week. And Goody was saying, and he sort of, that's why I like listening to him, because he sort of hints at stuff, but he never gives anything away. But he was saying that, like, some weeks teams are going to give us, heaps of layers that we can run our handball game through. And I feel like we had that against Freo. But then he said some weeks we're going to have teams like Richmond who flood their back line.
Yeah.
So you can't handball through it. So he goes, tonight we were doing more of a kick mark.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. So, maybe our handball game's really hot when we get it. And maybe the boys are like all on the same page when we do that. But for the next 3 weeks, we're going to see a kick mark style that we're not quite good enough at, that's going to be clunky. So I feel like, yeah, maybe we're learning 3 different modes to beat 3 different game styles. And maybe we're only good at one of them, but it's going to take time to get good at the other 2. Because last night, yeah, I was frustrated that we didn't have the same vigor, the same pace. We just didn't look like what we did the week before, but that's because we weren't even trying to do it.
Well, the thing is, it was so hard to move the ball in that second quarter because of exactly what you've said there. Richmond just decided that we're going to flood, and then Richmond decided that they were going to just play some keepings off at one point as well. And then Melbourne had to play a similar mode at one point to try and manufacture a score. So I don't think it was any coincidence that Christian Salem ends up having 34, Jake Bowey ends up having 32, Trent Rivers ends up having 28. They're your 3 half-backers.
Yeah.
And they possessed the ball a lot. They chipped it around a lot. Rivdog and Salem in particular, they didn't really take many kicks into the corridor, but that was a clear directive to go out wide and try and chain out through handball on the wings to then open up the forward 50. Great examples of that in the third quarter. And one of the best plays for me was actually when Tommy Sparrow and Ed Langdon found a way to work through it from a tight confine on the boundary line, and it ended up resulting in a goal. So definitely different avenues and different ways to kick a score last night, and we finally worked it out in the third. I think the other thing as well is once we started winning it from clearance in that third quarter,
Yeah.
it was game over. Like
Yep.
we were running rampant out of the middle. Clayton Oliver had a horrible first half. He only had the 5 touches. And I think Nick Revolt in the coverage, I think I saw this on my Twitter timeline when I tucked myself into bed, was having a go at him at halftime. And there were some shots of Clary on the bench looking quite despondent and almost in his head. But the one thing I'll say, just sticking up for Clayton Oliver, is he's a fucking proud footballer. Like, he knew that he was having a dirty first half and he responded in emphatic fashion. He had 13 disposals in the third quarter. He had 5 clearances. And he was one of the biggest reasons why we turned the tide, along with Cade Chandler for me, Tom Sparrow as well. And you'd have to say Christian Petrarca, who was putting the finishing touches on some great moves and kicked a ripping goal from outside 50 as well. So I'm really proud that Clary stepped up in that third quarter. And once we started winning it out of the middle at will, and we started winning, again, most of our 50-50s like we did in the first part of that first quarter, they just couldn't go with this. And the pressure was intense. And Goody's actually right, which kind of shits me a little bit. But again, I'm happy to be proven wrong by Simon. Like, continue to prove me wrong. Continue to make me look like the most amateur of football analysts, and I am. But that third quarter against Essendon, where he was so bullish, he's like, that's it. That's the blueprint. That's what we need to do moving forward. And then we replicate that again last night in the third quarter. And the pressure's through the roof. The intensity's insane. Harrison Petty's chase down tackle, I think, really epitomised that for me, where he was just absolutely busting a gut. The bloke that looks like a 55-year-old most of the time when the ball's not near him. The ball's in his vicinity. He sees the opposition player and he mows him down. That, for me, said everything that you need to know about the full team buy-in to defensive pressure. And again, I tip my hat to Goody. He spoke about Jacob Van Rooyen and Bailey Fritsch not being in the side purely because of defensive pressure. It wasn't necessarily the fact that they weren't hitting the scoreboard. And he spoke about how the biggest part of their game that was missing was actually not the fact that we weren't putting up big scores. So, of course, against North and the Suns, we only kick 60-odd, and then we kick a paltry, I think it's 46 or whatever it was against Geelong. And then again against Essendon, it's 57 off the top of my head. Just, you cannot live in that scoring range. We will not win games of football putting up a score like that. However, Goody said it wasn't about that. Goody said it was about how we defend the ground and how we defend in transition and how we get numbers behind the ball. But it was also, how can we apply forward half pressure so that teams just don't bounce it out? And last night in that third quarter was just a great example of everything that he's been saying in his press conferences. We applied forward half pressure and it resulted in scores and goals for us. And it was fucking awesome to see, Caden, because this is the big thing. If we can do that for 2.5 quarters, we're not going to be consistent for 4 quarters. It's probably just not going to happen. If we can do that, we'll probably be in most games, because when it's that ferocious and it's at that level, we actually look a good football team.
Yeah. I think it's been fascinating to listen to Goody talk about how they have unlocked it. And you touched on it then. But it's crazy that, all last year they were working on this forward connection. Oh, probably for 5 years I've just heard them say, yeah, we're trying to improve it. And then I heard that, we're going to work on it over summer. And then you get to games and you can't score. And Simon Goodwin as a coach is going, all right, well, we've tried Johnson and Jefferson, and maybe it's Fullerton, maybe it's Disco Turner. All right, we'll try Petty. And his big conundrum is like, what is going on? We've worked this game plan this whole time. We're focusing on trying to hit that target, trying to score more, and we can't. And then I don't know who had the light bulb moment, but a couple of weeks ago, they said it was after the Geelong game. They realised that you can't score if you're not getting the footy back, and what we have to focus on is tightening up that defense and applying more pressure. And once we do that, hopefully all the work we've done on the scoring will take care of itself. And that's sort of what's happened. And that is just like a fascinating, almost like art imitating life, life imitating art, where it's like, it's crazy that to unlock the scoring, which is like the positive part of football, we had to focus on the negative. Isn't that just like spiritual and, I don't know, a bit artistic? There's something in that. There's something bigger than football in that. But I just find that so fascinating. And it's worked for now. And, I almost gave up on the petty experiment last year. There's multiple times I thought, I was on this pod saying, look, he's walking around like a local footballer, contributing like a local footballer. But the petty that I've seen is this 195 centimetre, big, bustling, sticky mittens, physical player that can get on the scoreboard. So I'm glad that, he's kicked 6 in 2 weeks. He's looking pretty comfortable down there. I don't know. I'm just happy that mix is starting to take care of itself a little bit. The other thing you mentioned before that I wanted to touch on was you mentioned Bowey, Salem, and Tommy Sparrow. Now, I made a best 22 and I gave players like a tick and I can't remember the criteria, whether it was like, will they be All Australian one day or are they like contributors at AFL level? And I did it for a couple of teams, but I did it for ours. And like players like Windsor gets a tick, Track gets a tick. And there was players like Bowey with the question mark and Salem with the question mark and Tom Sparrow with the question mark. And it's not a question mark whether they should be in the best 22 because I'm not replacing a Tommy Sparrow with a Bailey Laurie or, there's no one coming up that would push them out. But just like they're going to play every week and across the competition, are they going to, are they, I don't know, are they good enough to contribute at a high level? And a couple of years ago, I would have said, man, Tommy Sparrow's found his role and knows what he's doing. But he went into sort of this footy abyss for a couple of years. Jake Bowey, his first handful of games, everyone knows straight away this is a 200-game player. But then for 18 months, he drifts a little bit. Salem's the same. So I was at a point with all those guys where I didn't know if in 2 years they'd be on the list. Like, are we going to push younger talent through that kicks them out? Because at the moment, like I had high hopes for all of them. But this is getting to an 18 to 24-month patch where they haven't looked the same and maybe they won't be the same. And it's just crazy that, calling Salem like a bottom 6 player is probably harsh and even Tom Sparrow, but these sort of like bottom 10 players that need to come with the top 10 to make us this great footy club are starting to take that next step. So it's just awesome to see that like Tom Sparrow's really, really settling. Salem's settling.
Yeah.
Bowey's playing unbelievable footy. Mate. And then I really like how Ed Langdon, I don't know, he's this little high half forward and he's in everything. And what I love about Ed Langdon is he's this sort of like Fitzroy, chill. He doesn't look like a footballer. Like the way he presents and chats, he's sort of like too cool for footy. But then when he's out on the park, he puts his head over it and gets decked and throws his body and commits himself as much as any other Melbourne Football Club player. And he's just been in everything as that high half forward. So players who've sort of been a little bit lost, we've shifted the magnets a little bit and we're starting to get the most out of these players, which will eventually, once the bottom 6 and the top 6 sort of, you close the gap between them, that's when we'll start to become a consistent good footy side again.
Yeah, spot on. Christian Salem, I think he's had a really good few weeks, promising few weeks. I think he's getting back to a much better version of himself, which is great to see. And Jake Bowey, God.
He's so good.
He's top 3 in the BNF at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shoot down Max Gawn. I'm going to have a go at Max Gawn.
He's robbed him.
You robbed him of the Frank Checker. Come on, mate.
Give it back, Max.
Well,
Hand it over.
This is the thing. Like, we know internally as Melbourne supporters how good Jake Bowey is or can be, and he certainly showed it in the first 7 weeks. But if he was going to get some league-wide recognition, the little fella, fucking hell, Max, it's rude. It's selfish. Because I think Jake Bowey was probably only second behind Max. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I suppose in the UFC, like the guy who sort of the guy who sort of jabs and might jab consistently doesn't get the like whoa factor of the guy who gets jabbed all night but then counters. So
Yeah.
it's funny. You might see a result where the guy who's getting the big pops loses, and you get confused, but it's because he's done less work. And like I felt like Max was getting the wow moments. He was like taking the big soaring contested marks, and it was like far out Maxi. But then in between his 4 or 5 big soaring marks, Jake Bowey's just going to work, sort of unassumingly. But yeah, I don't know. You could raffle it between them. They were both unbelievable. Max Gawn, yeah, after the first couple of rounds, once again, it's like, is this the start of the end? And he's just, this is the Max Gawn. Like, the first couple of rounds was outliers in his career. This is more like the average Max Gawn that we get every week. Like, 24, big clunks, big contested clunks. He should have kicked 3 or 4 goals across the last 2 weekends as well. He's missed some easy ones. So once he starts getting that scoreboard nourishment, he'll go to another level. But yeah, oh my God. What a performance by both of them.
Max Gawn. So he had 9 marks as my son bashes down the door. He's something else, this kid, seriously. If we want a key forward in 18 years or 15 years, he's 3. Sign him up. He's going to be an absolute brute. Stop bashing the door, Harry. Back to Max Gawn. So Max Gawn, 9 marks, 5 contested, 12 score involvements, most of any demon on the ground. For context, the next best was Track with 9. I don't know what to say anymore. I'd say the same thing every time when I speak about him. It's almost a little bit boring. I run out of superlatives for Max Gawn. Max Gawn is going to make 60, 70,000 Melbourne supporters at the MCG when he plays his final game for the club. He is going to make them all cry collectively. It will be one of the tougher days in footy to see him off, because I don't think we fully appreciate, or maybe we do fully appreciate, but seeing a player just go about his trade in the way that he does and fronts up with supreme fitness, supreme resilience, bravery backing into packs. Yes, he's a big fella, but he takes a lot of heavy knocks and hits, and he comes up against very good physical ruckmen and he makes them look absolutely amateur. And he did it again last night against Nankervis. We are so spoiled. And Max Gawn is the player that I will tell my son, who is bashing the door down, Harry, I will talk to, and Jasper, I forget about him. I'll tell both the boys that Max Gawn did things on a football field that defied logic at times, the way that he backs into packs and clunks them. His hands are majestic, Caden. It's ridiculous. And it's always so clean in the way that he takes them and clunks them. And just when a game is there to be won, how many times have we seen Max go to work in the middle as well? And then sometimes just take it upon himself, where he's like, we just need to get this out of the middle and move it forward. We've got momentum. Let's take advantage of the 666 here, and the opposition's unsettled. So
I think
I just love him. It's crazy.
His grabbing out of the ruck feels like it's a bit more designed in the last year or so.
Yeah.
It felt like he'd just, we'd lose a couple of centre clearances, maybe middle of last year. He'd panic, grab it out the ruck, try and throw it on the boot. It'd get smothered, go the other way. But he was doing it against Freo, and he knew that he had like a cosy handball sort of over the top, or a track handball. So he'd grab it out the ruck, sort of feint as if he's going to bomb it long, dish that handball, and we were out. So I actually like the method in his grab it out of the ruck recently. But how fun is it as a Melbourne supporter? I don't know if anyone else does this, and I don't know why I do this, but I'll go with a neutral fan or I'll go with an opposition fan, and they'll have it at half back and they'll look long down the line. And as their defender is going to kick it, I just go, he's kicked it to Max Gawn. He hasn't kicked it to Max Gawn, has he? And then he floats across, takes the mark, and everyone goes, how did you see that happening? You are a footballing genius. And I just go,
send it every week.
And they did it in the first quarter. They did it like 3 or 4 times. Every time I'd be like, oh, they're not kicking a Max again. And this is before these blokes even kicked it, and then they just put it straight on his head. It's ridiculous that he is the brick wall.
It's insane. I said on the Tiger Cast, a Richmond fan podcast, was interviewed on Wednesday, and he spoke about the battle between Nank and Gawn in the middle, and I said, that's not the battle. I said, the battle for you guys is don't kick it to him.
Yeah.
I just said, you got to kick around him, and you just don't bomb long. Don't bomb long down the line, otherwise Max will pluck it out of the air, and it's invariably what happened. He is everything. Max Gawn. Fucking hell.
And Nank. There's a lot of these ruckmen who come up against him.
Come on,
and just give him ear massages. Like Pitney is one who just gives him ear massages. Second to the contest, try and clips his head off. And Nank last night trying to drive the shoulder into Track's ribs. Now, Track has pulled out of a couple of contests, which is 100% fair. Like, backing back into contests in the modern game isn't like a full requirement, especially when it's not your role. Like it's a nice to have, but it's not like an absolute must when you're out of position to throw yourself at it. And you got to be a bit smart about when you can and can't go.
Yeah.
And at times, the last few weeks, Track has not gone, and it's like absolutely fair enough. I'd rather you miss this contest and maybe crumb it than miss the whole season like you did last year. But I reckon last night, 2 or 3 times Track put his hands up, went back, took the mark, and he did it on the wing, and Nate just drove the shoulder in on purpose. And I thought, I guess it's like the one opportunity where it's like a footballing act, but you can sort of maim an opposition gun player. But it was just one of those like old school, like thuggish acts where I was like, that is poor, Nank. Like that is really poor.
I just think there's a lot of jealous ruckmen out there. I think we've all played competitive sport. I think most people listening, it's a very Australian thing to do. And I've come up against some guys that are just better than you, and they wear you down, and they get in your head, and it just frustrates you. And then, maybe a little cheap shot from myself because I'm just like fucking annoyed.
You're the Nank.
Yeah, I'm the Nank.
You're the Nank in this story.
This is the thing. Like, I don't think Gawn's ever been the Nank because Gawn is Gawn. He's one of the GOATs. So the thing, do you know what? The thing that doesn't get spoken about ever gets spoken about with Max, he is an insanely fair footballer.
Yeah.
Like, crazy fair in the same mould as maybe a Pendlebury as well, where they just don't hit blokes. They're just not thugs. I don't think Max Gawn has ever done an act where I'm like, oof, geez, that's off brand.
Especially against Port Adelaide or like teams like that where Port Adelaide and Adelaide, Max will be running to the contest. He's 70 metres away and he'll have little high half forwards or midfielders literally like elbowing him in the guts and like smashing into him. And like, it would be almost understandable if in one of his 200 odd games for the footy club, he, as he's charging to the contest, sort of puts out a forearm that collects him high or sort of like, not chins a bloke, but out of frustration, trying to get to the contest. They've done this all game. He sort of accidentally retaliates, but he never does. He takes the high road. He just gets to the next contest. The resilience and like the toughness to just keep showing up, ear massages, back and back into packs. Man, we're going to miss him when he inevitably hangs it up. And he will be irreplaceable. We'll never see a ruckman like that, maybe ever again. But for at least 25 years, we will not see this again at our club.
I'm going to cry so much. It's going to be, like, honestly, I'm almost getting emotional now. Like, it is going to be insane, Caden. It's gonna be like Robbie, I reckon, for the older gen. And I would love the older gen to comment on YouTube or send a message into the Instagram page. What was it like when Robbie hung up the boots? And I don't know where the book is. It's around here somewhere, but I'm actually reading a book on Robbie at the moment. It's really fascinating stuff. So much in there that I didn't even realise about the bloke. An incredible footballer, but also had so many offers to leave Melbourne throughout his career, and he stuck fat. And I love that about Max as well. Like he's a true Melbourne person. But that day, Caden, fucking hell, it's gonna. Honestly, I'm gonna be a wreck. I'll have to take days off work after that one. But we've still got him for a few more years. So shut up, Adrian, and get on with it. Xavier Lindsay and Harvey Langford. I just want to make a mention of them, and then maybe we go back to Tommy Sparrow really quickly because a bit of a maligned player and certainly putting his best foot forward now, which is great. But Langford and Lindsay, they both have 21 last night. And the one thing that I find fascinating about that is they were good possessions for the most part. They are so comfortable at the level that they just waltz out there. They get their low 20s. They contribute. They're involved in some really nice passages of play. And we're not even talking about them. And these are two young men that have come into the AFL system only just recently. And they're plying their trade on the biggest stage that they've played on in front of 70 plus thousand. And I was on the forums and Twitter last night and no one's talking about them. So I just wanted to make mention that these two young kids who are going to be absolute stars for us, I think we can tell already, just getting possessions, getting it done, playing good footy, and we're not even talking about them. I just think that speaks volumes about the caliber of player that we've got in with those two.
Yeah, so lucky. And they're different types. Like they're meant to be skillful and poised, opposed to big body crash packs. And like I know we've referenced this, and we've drafted a little bit differently across the last few years because we're obviously designing that next team to be different to what the last team was. But also they complement what we've got at the moment, which is a plus. I'm going to be a little bit hard on my man Harvey, and I just think some of his kicks, his 20-meter kicks, when he's sort of rolling off a mark, can be loopy. And he stitched Jack Viney up, and Jack Viney was sort of lucky to get the free kick because I suppose Taranto did tunnel / knock his arms out, but he almost got a play on the ball as well. It was a weird one where it was like a half body spoil.
It was weird.
But that was the Harvey Langford hospital ball. So he's great with the 40-meter darts. Yep. And like when he's rolling on that left foot, looking inside 50, he can really like sizzle it in. But when he's sort of flat-footed, going for that 15 one, that 15, 20-meter one, he can put it up a little bit. Salem's almost the same. Salem, when he's doing the shorter ones, just pops it. Stop popping it, boys. Hit it chest height. Just dart it in. But, yeah, I don't know. What I liked about Langford, I love that, moving the magnets around. He's a big-bodied mid, and we thought, all right, he's a big-bodied mid, but we've got midfielders, so we'll play him in the twos. And then we're going, well, what are we doing? Like, he's too good for the twos. Let's find him a role in the AFL side. Oh, well, he's got traits like Jack Crisp and Hayden Young. Why don't we put him high half forward? Didn't quite work. All right, let's put him on the wing. Yeah, unbelievable. Like, he's so... Yes, what a decision. And now with him on the wing, I love that he's in some of the defensive plays. Like what I like about him is there was plays where he's sort of rushing back in defense and he just uses his body and keeps his feet and sort of shields the ball in a really experienced way and gets us out of trouble. So it's like, it's not even the flashy sort of breaking the lines and using the left peg that I love about Harv. It's like this experienced, smart body that just sort of, keeps the ball in front of him, sort of taps it along for Salem and Bowey, just helps out really professionally in defence. And then, Zave Lindsay.
Smooth.
He reminds me of Gus in terms of like cool, calm, collected. I think he was the captain of Vic Metro or definitely the captain of Gippsland. So he's just got leadership traits. I had both of them in at Channel 7 for a segment, and it was quite funny. It was like Xavier Lindsay was this sort of, I don't know, military type leader, very smart. I would assume he went to a private school, and Harv's like this loose, like hustler bustle character, up and about, sort of stirring him. So they're polar opposites in terms of personality, but it's amazing that we got it both, and they're both contributing.
Yeah, it's great. X had 11 marks as well and was a part of that trio of Rivdog and Bowey and Salem that just kept things ticking over. And when we were switching it a lot to try and find the angles, just looks at home. They both just look at home. So I think we're blessed, and I think we've done well with those two. Tommy Sparrow. Then I want to talk about Caleb Windsor really quickly, because I think there's a bit of a myth floating around, and we don't want to shoot the boy down too much because
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's only his second year in the system, but I think we need to talk about him. And he's still going well, don't get me wrong. But Tommy Sparrow is someone that we've spoken about at will, and I think most Melbourne supporters are often having this conversation. What is his role? Where is he going to play his best footy? How are we going to maximise Tommy Sparrow? And clearly it hasn't worked out of the middle in a second rotation role. So now you've got this forward pressure player, and we saw it on show last night. He had the 11 tackles, 16 disposals, kicked a goal. Huge in the third. I love the pressure that he was applying. If his role can be as simple as this, you are the guy that is tasked with chasing down opposition opponents and trying to help and ensure that the ball doesn't bounce out of D50. Done. He's got his role. And he'll also get involved with scoring chains. He might kick a couple himself because he's actually a fairly decent kick at goal, and he always has been. So if that's Tommy Sparrow's role from now on, I am pleased because he can complement what Cade Chandler gives us, who has been super consistent in the first 7 weeks. And I think he's flown under the radar a little bit with some supporters. I think he's putting up a really decent season, and I think we've been crying out for consistency from Chin, and that's what we're starting to get. So with Tommy, that's it. That's all I want him to do from now on. And I hope the coaching staff recognise that last night, simply put, this is your role from now on, Tommy. I don't want it to be complicated or convoluted anymore. I don't want him switched into different positions. I just want him to be this defensive forward pressure player. Done. Period. That's what he is for me now.
Yeah, and he's starting to do it at a high level. Is it essentially the Alex Neil-Bullen role, or is it a little bit different?
I think he's sharing it with Chin, to be honest. I think they're both complementing each other. And again, I probably got to go back at the tape and look at it a little bit more. And I think I'm going to start looking at that part of the field more anyway, because clearly one of our biggest deficiencies, and I spoke about it off the top of the show, was the fact that teams were able to just bounce out of D50 with absolute ease. And Melbourne's DNA under Goody has always been forward half territory, repeat inside 50s, pile the pressure on, manufacture opportunities through pressure. So I'm really keen to see how those two players go in this system and whether they're just waxing on, waxing off in terms of that Alex Neil-Bullen void. So I think it's a bit of a watch chaos, but yeah, I just think it's simple. Like that's it for me. Like you just be the manic pressure player. He'll chip in, he'll kick a couple here and there, and that's it. Like,
yeah, I feel like Tom Sparrow's still young. Like not Caleb Windsor young, but in terms of career in the AFL, still probably just slightly immature. And he's sort of on a similar trajectory to what Alex Neil-Bullen was. Like Nibbler, draft pick in the 30-ish. I reckon Tom Sparrow would have been thereabouts. Nibbler started playing really early on, and then kept getting games, but was almost like that 18th to 20th player for a long time, and then almost got traded, Nibbler, and then found his role, found his spot. And sometimes that happens with players. Like sometimes, progress isn't linear, and people develop at different rates. And I reckon, and this isn't for every case, but you're almost better to struggle but keep being selected in the AFL and just figure it out than be a player, and I've used his name a couple of times and I apologise, but like a Bailey Laurie or a, he's sort of bouncing in and out. He's dominating VFL games, but then he's not getting a long enough stint in the AFL, or there's no role for him in the AFL for it to click for him. But Tommy Sparrow, it's frustrating sometimes when he goes missing, but he's figuring it out at the highest level. And I think that's almost a positive for us and him. And yeah, we've been waiting for the Tommy Sparrow pop. And maybe he doesn't go to that next echelon. Like maybe Tom Sparrow is a B pluser and that's his ceiling.
Sure.
But
Right.
yeah, I feel like he could get to that B plus. And like I think expecting him to be a Petrarca or an Oliver might be unrealistic. But yeah, he's found his role, and he's like a role driven. Like he in interviews, I used to say this about Nibbler, but Tommy Sparrow, he regurgitates the philosophies and the sentiments of the club. Like he's a Melbourne Football Club. Like he's a driver of standards, and he's invested. So if it clicks for him, you know, he'll be a great contributor for the club.
We're going to speak about Caleb Windsor, but just really quickly before we do, Cosy doesn't have a big night, and that's a good thing. Kicks 1 goal, has 18. He's involved in quite a few scores, but it's just not really his night. So I just wanted to make mention that I think that's a good thing. We can get by without Cos putting in a big day like he did against Fremantle. I would expect him to bounce back big time, particularly given that the game's in Perth next week as well. But just wanted to make a little note of Cosy there. But Caleb Windsor collects his 20. However, I think there is a slight myth running around that he's a good kick. And I think I've said it myself that he's a good kick, but I've started to watch him a lot more closely in recent weeks. And it's like he's either kicking the long floater or he's kicking the grubber. There's no real in between. And I think you made mention of it, Dos, that you'd love to see him just hitting those kicks that are the darting, piercing ones. And we're not seeing that from Caleb. So has the most meters gained of any demon on the ground, which again is fantastic. That's absolutely great. That's what we want from him. We want him breaking lines, but he's got to learn to tidy up a bit, I think.
Yeah, I was going to guess that. When you said there's a myth about Caleb Windsor, I thought it's only going to be one thing. His dad got interviewed last night on Roaming Brian, and BT goes, "Oh, so who's this?" And Caleb goes, "Oh, it's my dad." He goes, "Oh, Dad, what do you think?" He goes, "No, he's going okay. He's going okay." And his dad spoke really well. And BT goes, "What's he got to improve on?" His dad goes, "He's got to start hitting some of these sort of 25-meter kicks."
That's good.
And Caleb Windsor was like nodding. He's like, "Yeah."
Oh, he knows.
Yeah. Because there was a couple of obvious ones last night where, I don't know, he looks like he loves to bite them off as well. Yeah. And once again, I'd rather Caleb Windsor looking for them and wanting to bite them off and missing, and we embrace, the Craig McRae, we embrace the imperfection, we encourage the decision-making and just wear the execution rather than sort of dull him down and tell him to put it away. But he's got to get better at it. If he's going to be the guy that pulls the trigger and he's the quarterback off the half-back line, he's got to get better at it, because some of those kicks last night didn't cost us, but they will. In big games, in a year's time, in 2 years' time, we're back at the G, we're playing a big semi-final, it's us against the Cats, and he kicks some of those kicks. A Geelong side, a Collingwood side, a Brisbane side, they'll punish you, and they are ruthless and relentless. So you just can't give him those easy ones that he did give, especially at that part of the ground. But I like that he's got the license, and I like that he's got the sort of confidence to do it. It's just we got to manage that sort of manage that mindset and sort of make sure he nails them.
Oh, well, his dad knows. Caleb knows. So we didn't even have to tell him. We didn't even have to bring this up. If anyone had seen that interview on Channel 7, then everyone knows that that's the deficiency in his game at the moment. But other than that, he's a splendid footballer. And again, I'll just reinforce, he's only second year. So I'm still super excited about his prospects. Stephen May, which leads into Tom McDonald, which leads into Harrison Petty.
When are we talking about Fullers?
We'll talk about him soon. We'll talk about him after this. But it's like it's a trio. It's a triangle. And the triangle is like, Stephen May, you are getting old, my friend. You come off the bench, you look like you've done a groin or whatever you've done. You've ripped the hammy off the bone. You're out for 12 weeks. And then suddenly 10 minutes later, you're back on the field. And I don't know. Is this guy starting to wane? The injury concerns are exactly that. They are concerning, because that's why they're called injury concerns, Adrian. But I'm just a bit worried about his body. And it's a funny one because he has 20 and he takes 10 marks. And he played relatively well. And Tom Lynch kicks 3, but one of them was while he was off on the pine with a suspected injury. But again, he comes back and I'm a bit torn. And I said it on the preview show. Is Stephen May going to be in our back 6 come end of year when Jake Lever's fit and hopefully up and running? And the triangle is about, does Harrison Petty potentially go back and does Stephen May potentially lose his spot toward the end of the year? Or is there still life in Stephen? And Tom McDonald is the exclamation mark on this because I think he's holding up that defence
Is
beautifully.
Yeah.
Like, he has really wound the clock back from a defensive standpoint in the last couple of years. I thought he was really good last year, and like many players toward the back end of the year, fell off a bit of a cliff, but he was one of so many to have done that. The first half of his year was exceptional. He's in great form, Tommy McDonald, and the fact that Stephen does have injury clouds and the fact that Jake Lever's out for an extended period, you got to give your credit to Tom McDonald and what he is dishing up at the moment. It is superb. I love him. But back to the triangle, I just don't know. Is Harrison Petty going to be the one that eventually goes back when Disco Turner's in the lineup? Are we going to play him back? Are we going to put him up forward again? There's a triangle that almost becomes a square when you throw in Disco, and then you've almost got a hexagon when you throw Jake Lever into the mix if they're all fit. So it's very curious to me, Caden, what that mix ends up looking like in the back half of the year, and I just don't know. I'm at a loss to try and figure out how we figure out this equation and what we do with our back 6 setup, because it's a watch at the moment with Stephen. It's a watch with Petty forward, Jake Lever being out, Disco forward back. Oh, it's so confusing. Listen to me. I sound muddled by it all.
Well, it probably extends, like if Petty is in the equation of the backs, then I think that whole conundrum, the domino effects goes to Rue's not in at the moment, but is Johnson the best second ruck, but Fullers is there, but does Disco does Disco solve that issue, or does he solve the defensive issue? And then if Disco's, so it is complicated. And I was watching last night, and in the first quarter and a half, I genuinely was like, because you've said this for a little while, like you flagged it that Stephen May might be on the decline, and it's inevitable, and it's going to happen at some point, and we're looking for signs of it now. And I saw signs of it in that first quarter and a half. I thought, Tom Lynch was doing as he please. Stephen May, when he gets beaten, tries to overcompensate by like trying to get to the next contest, and then sometimes he pushes up and doesn't stay deep, and then he's in between kicks. I reckon in the first quarter, Max was backing back for a mark. I reckon this happened 2 or 3 times during the night, and May got in the way. And maybe it's Gawney getting in the way, considering it's in defence, but he was like spoiling May. May was spoiling Gawn.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I saw signs of decline in that first quarter and a half.
Yeah.
Then he went off, and then he came back on. He had a patch where I was like, man, this is one of the best key backs in the competition.
Yeah.
Clunking him. And he did that, he had a couple of rough weeks. Oh, no, he didn't play for a little bit. But then he did have a performance against Geelong, which was vintage. But then against Essendon, he drops a sitter and costs us the game. So I'm sort of at a loss with Maisie. But, that backline scenario, ideally, it's probably Lever. Well, definitely Lever.
Yeah.
It's May.
Yeah. And then who?
It's Tommy Mack.
Yeah.
And that's probably it from a key position standpoint. But if Lever isn't in that, right now, it's probably Disco.
Yeah.
After the 5-minute patch I saw against Freo when he was clunking everything.
I think so.
And then my forward line,
Ooh,
ideally.
Are we doing this now? Is this what's happening? Just before you do it, a hexagon is 6-sided. A pentagon is 5-sided. So I got them the other way around.
Are we in Pentagon territory?
Well, I thought a pentagon was 6-sided, but it's 5, and hexagon, I got them the wrong way around. So when do you learn that stuff? When you're like 6?
Yeah, and then you forget it at 8 and you never need to reference it again until you're on the debrief at 30.
Exactly. Or 35 like me, fucking old bastard. Do you want to do this dance, don't you? You want to go to the forward line. You want to
Well,
talk about fullers. You want to talk about Roo.
No, well, now I'm seeing
can do it.
shapes. I'm seeing shapes, and I want to get it off my chest. Like
Do it
I'm
then.
just sort of inundated with.
Do it. I know you've been waiting for this for 55 minutes, and this is probably the final thing we'll talk about. But the floor is yours. What do we do?
So, lever made Tommy Mac, and then forward. So I wrote on Twitter,
Yes,
and I said the thing with Tom Fullerton is like passive performance.
yeah,
Love Fullers. We love Fullers. Kick bags in the VFL.
He's a cult.
Unbelievable.
he's a cult.
Casey Scorpion star.
Yeah,
But a little bit passive in the AFL, which is fine. No, it's not. But what I like about Fullers is last week and a little bit this week until the last quarter, when he goes in for the second ruck, don't shoot me down when I say this, but he looks better than I think anyone else we've seen in the second ruck. And that's probably saying more about Roo's ruckcraft and Tommy Mac's ruckcraft when he's rotated through and Jeffo's ruckcraft and Petty's ruckcraft than it is saying about Tom Fullerton's ruckcraft. But all I'm saying is when Tom Fullerton goes down there, he sort of has that sort of like hit to look of a ruckman, and then he's a relevant forward. So you bring Roo in for Fullerton, it solves the forward conundrum, which Fullerton isn't coming to the table for. But then it brings Roo back into the second ruck conversation, which is something that I don't want to have. So I'm sort of at a loss where it's like, yeah, it's a no-brainer to bring Roo in for Fullerton from a forward perspective. But then that second ruck, we're going to be putting our best key forward back in the second ruck, which is a frustrating thing that we do. So I don't know. Aiden Johnson was very good in the VFL. Is it a Roo, Petty, and Fullerton? Like, can he sort of... I'm just at a loss with this second ruck. Like, we know the forward solution, but we don't have the second ruck solution yet.
I'm going to blow it up. Why couldn't we, if Harrison Petty plays forward, why couldn't he just be the second ruck? No?
So, no, he could, but I genuinely think Tom Fullerton looks better in the...
We could blow it up further. Tommy Campbell.
I said he played 5 games this year. Surely he plays the West Coast game. We rest Max.
He might. Oh, just quickly, really quickly. And I've got to go out with the kids. But I think people getting upset about the way that we ended that game need to chill a little bit. I was not bothered by it one iota. People are saying we lack ruthlessness. We let Richmond kick 4 late goals. Yes, because we had a 5-day break. I know they did as well. We put our main man, Max Gawn, on the pine, and the game turned, and they kicked a few cheapies at the end. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I actually think the very fact that we put Max on the pine for the rest of the game was one of the smarter things I've seen in recent times, because we have been speaking about this at Will, where why haven't we rested Max Gawn for that game? Or why didn't we take Max Gawn off at the very end? Why didn't we take our prized assets off and just give them a breather that the game is won? So you can't have it both ways, guys. Like,
yeah,
I'm into the idea of what we did. I think it was great. Conserve your stars, wrap them up in cotton wool, and then we move on to the next week. So people getting a little bit shitty about how the game played out and Richmond kicking those goals. Of course, it's annoying because our percentage is shot. I understand that. But it's not a big deal. It's just not going to be a big deal in the wash-up. And the reality is we're just not going to get our percentage back to a healthy level because of the start to the year. So if Melbourne find themselves in a world where they're contending for finals come the pointy end, unfortunately, the reality is it's very likely we're going to be that team that needs to look at it as, well, if we're on level points with others competing for finals, our percentage is going to be detrimental, and it's almost going to be like we're a game behind. So it's just where we are as a byproduct of what we put up for that month of footy when we were getting torched by an average of 50-odd points or whatever it was. So it's going to be very hard to mow into it over the course of time. So we shouldn't even be talking about finals. Melbourne.
I was gonna say.
I know.
I was gonna say we're not a finals team.
No, we're not a finals team.
I'm optimistic and I'm excited, and I think the next 18 months will be brighter and more excited than the last 18 months. But we're not a finished product, and we're not consistent enough in game and consistent enough during a season to chase it down anyway. But I wouldn't be surprised. You know, there's going to be a patch where we sort of get back to the ledger, and there'll be a patch middle of the year where we drop 2 or 3 in a row and we drop off the ledger and we're frustrated. And then another patch where we finish off the season, we win a couple more games. And I think, you know, we might be that team. We're going to be hard to play against if we play like we played last night.
Certainly.
And hopefully that's more often than not. We're going to be a team that those top 4, top 6, top 8 teams who want to bank wins on the run home don't want to play. And hopefully we give ourselves a platform, you know, 20 games into Lindsay, Langford, Windsor, Tholstrop, McVeigh, Bowey, you know, River. Yeah, we're just giving ourselves a platform for next year, I think. Because when we do ping it end to end at the moment and we get it right, it's some of the best footy that I've seen us play for a long, long time.
Totally agree. Let's wrap up on that note. Great to see Judd McVeigh back out there. It was a good game. It was just a run out for him after being out for an extended period of time. So that was good. And then probably the best way to end this is let's just give all Melbourne supporters a collective kiss, Colton Tholstrop style. Because he was just macking on. He was just giving kisses left, right, and centre. And he is a quirky young man.
I love him.
He's got the curls going on with what looks to be tips, the blonde flowing through it. I don't think it's his natural hair. And he's just kissing his teammates. And I'm all about it. Good on him. He's a weird dude. I like him. He only had the 4 disposals, but he actually had a goal assist and a goal. So if he ends up being a Melksham where he is low possession, high impact, again, I'm into it. And I'm into it, Colt. If you want to embrace your teammates like that, I'm all for it. He's a quirky guy, and I like Colt. And he will be a cult figure at some point in the future. So maybe we leave it there, Kados.
Well, they said in the off-season that we love each other. Yeah. And all the shows throughout our 0-5 patch were saying they clearly don't love each other. They're not showing it. And now Colton's showing it. So really it's a reflection of what's happening inside the 4 walls.
Good on him. No, we like Colton. We'll wrap it up there. Kados, thanks for your time. Enjoy the Essendon and Collingwood game. It's always a very, very special game. And I think both clubs show an enormous respect for each other. They're old foes. Of course, a lot of Melbourne supporters listening to this probably loathe both outfits. But for me, I've always put it to one side when I watch this game. And it's spine-tingling with the last post, and again, we got to experience it last night. It's great to be a part of, I guess, the curtain raiser to this game today, but it is such an incredible occasion, and it's one that all footy fans, I think, can park their dislike for the 2 clubs if they don't support them, and just rally behind a very important day for our country. So enjoy it, my friend.
Cannot wait. Should be a good contest. Put the feet up and enjoy the weekend after a win by the D's on Thursday night.
Yeah, how much footy are you going to watch now?
Heaps. And all the shows. I'll watch the shows over and over. So the replay.
Such a difference to where we were how many days ago? Like 10 days ago, whatever it was. Like, not even 10, like 6 days ago. It's 6 days ago, pre-Freo. Like the change is...
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I said, I know we've just wrapped up. And maybe this is off air, but I said
we're still on.
We'd win 3 of the next 4 after we lost the first 5 because I thought we'd beat Essendon, and then I thought we'd win the Tigers and West Coast. And then when we lost to Essendon, I thought, geez, I do not know football, and I'm going to hang the mic up. But we're a chance to win 3 of the next 4. So
we're a chance.
Fingers crossed.
I'm 2 games away, 2 wins away from wearing clown suits.
I keep seeing all those comments.
Yeah, everyone's keen to see myself and Marker, and if Nuggets is in the studio or Adzi, I'm going to hire a professional makeup artist. And
yeah, great.
go the full hog. So again, Melbourne Football Club, please, for the love of God, make me a clown. I want to be a clown because that means we've just beaten Hawthorn at the MCG and fuck. I'd have to call the missus, tell her I'm out. Tell her I'm out for the night. I'm not coming home to see the kids, even though I love them dearly. Dad's going out. He's going to have a few sherbets and enjoy himself because that would feel very flaggy. So we'll leave it on that. But Kados, enjoy your day.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me.
And for all the listeners and the viewers on YouTube, Russell Robertson makes his big return this week. He's been a little bit muzzled. He's been a little bit stressed and pissed off with what was transpiring with the football club in the first 5 rounds, like all of us. So it's going to be so nice to have Robbo on board. I think we're going to put that one out for free as well. So a big shout out to all the premium subscribers that contribute to this podcast. Without your hard-earned, simply couldn't be doing what I'm doing and justifying it to the boss as well. So thank you. And the player ratings are up. So no surprises. The cat's out of the bag. I gave Maxi a 10 because he is a 10 out of the 10. The D's are 2 and 5. Let's get to 3 and 5. We're on a roll.